What is being reported is that the Revolutionary Guard has lost its central command inside Iran, while the regime rejects any ceasefire and continues to push the conflict forward. The result is a chaotic scenario with missing leaders, conflicting orders, and attacks continuing even without visible coordination. At the top, what happened is straightforward. The central command structure of the Revolutionary Guard in Tehran is said to have been broken after a series of attacks that hit facilities, bases, and leaders connected to the Iranian military apparatus. The ones at the center of this crisis are the heads of the Revolutionary Guard, their regional commanders, the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio. And also Israel, which continues to work alongside the United States in the effort to crush the regime's military capability. This weighs most heavily in the Iranian capital, but the effect is already spreading to other areas of Iran and to strategic points in the Gulf, according to the latest circulating information. In this war environment, the main leaders of the Revolutionary Guard reportedly have not been appearing and have not been communicating clearly, and they left local and regional commanders without clear direction. As a consequence, what remains on the ground are loose groups, units acting in a scattered way, and launches that continue even without the presence of a visible central leadership. This helps explain why the regime seems increasingly aggressive and at the same time more confused. In Tehran, the impact is already described as heavy. Areas of the capital were hit again, strategic neighborhoods were rocked by new explosions, and the city was once again gripped by fear. At the same time, the checkpoints scattered throughout the city and other regions changed their configuration. First they were fixed, then they were moved to tunnels and more protected locations. Now they are reportedly becoming mobile, in a desperate attempt to reduce losses and maintain some kind of internal surveillance. This shows how the regime tries to survive amid external pressure and the risk of collapse from within. Another key point is the rejection of a ceasefire, even with signs of weakening at the center of the military apparatus. The regime's official stance remains one of rejecting any pause or truce and insisting on a complete end to the war. In its own terms, this response reveals a lot. It shows that Tehran fears showing weakness precisely at a time when the leadership seems shaken. That's why the regime is toughening its rhetoric. Even when the operational situation suggests a loss of control, this weakens the command's ability and increases the chance for what's left of the structure. Agir no improviso. At the same time, the Iranian attacks didn't stop. There were new actions against targets in the Gulf. Qatar reported the interception of cruise missiles launched from Iran, with the third projectile hitting an oil tanker leased by Qatar Energy. There were no deaths. There was also mention of attacks against business facilities in Bahrain and against a British company in the Erbil region. This shows that, even with the capability, the regime still tries to maintain its ability to intimidate neighboring nations, Western companies, and strategic interests in the Middle East. There is another important detail. The war no longer seems to be just a matter of an external front. The material indicates that the Revolutionary Guard is setting up roadblocks, tightening internal control, and trying to prevent any major movement by the population. This happens because the regime knows that when a central command weakens, the risk doesn't just come from the external enemy. It also comes from the fear of disobedience, internal rupture, and the definitive loss of authority. From the United States, the rhetoric has also become tougher. Marco Rubio called Abbas Araghchi a liar and emphasized that Washington sees the Iranian regime as a radical and long-term threat. Trump, on the other hand, went back to sending contradictory messages, while at the same time maintaining maximum pressure. And he signals that he would only consider a truce if the Strait of Hormuz remains open and free. In practice, the American message continues to be about crushing the military threat of the regime before any serious talks. The most explosive development right now is this. The Revolutionary Guard keeps attacking, but no longer conveys an image of solid command. This makes everything more dangerous when the leadership disappears, when chiefs hide, when local commanders don't know whom to answer to, and when the regime rejects the ceasefire. Even so, the risk of mistakes, excesses, and chaos increases dramatically. The picture that emerges now is of a wounded, cornered, and even more unpredictable regime. The Revolutionary Guard tries to keep the war alive, but what is being reported is a broken chain of command and the rejection of the ceasefire. Instead of seeming reliable, it sounds more and more like a reflection of a power that feels it is losing control of its own center.